Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it, everybody taking the time out of their very busy days to be here and have this discussion. I want to start off by acknowledging just how hard all of you and the leaders of Arizona's cities and towns have worked to keep Arizonans safe from COVID-19. You all are in many ways on the front lines of this crisis, responsible for sharing information and providing guidance with the community that you serve, and overseeing first responders and making financial resources and testing available to our cities. So thank you for everything you've been doing. I know it's not been easy, and thank you for continuing to do it. This pandemic has touched every corner of Arizona, but we know it has impacted different communities in different ways. And we're making progress, but I think it's important to know that we are not yet through this crisis. We're still fighting to slow the spread of the virus and also ensure that anyone who needs it can get the care that they need and the care that their families need. And we're also facing a recovery that presents an entirely different set of challenges. That's why we're here. And it's to hear from all of you about what you've been facing in your communities, what is working, and what you still need to protect your community and to ensure a strong recovery for all Arizonans. So thanks again for joining all of the mayors of some of our very large and some of our best cities and towns here in the state. I want to start with Gerardo Anaya, the mayor of Somerton, Coral Evans, the mayor of Flagstaff, Craig McFarland, mayor of Casa Grande, Anna Tovar, mayor of Tullison, and Mark Mitchell, the mayor of Tempe. And Mark, I hope your dad is doing well. Gabby really enjoyed serving in Congress with him. So let me start, and this first question here is for the entire group. So we'll just kind of go in order, maybe starting with Craig. But I just want to hear from all of you, just to start out. Can each of you tell us what your particular city or town has experienced over the last several months?
Okay, then I'll start. It's been difficult. It's been a process where you shut everybody down, you shut our businesses down. So it's really been a process of disseminating information. You collect as much data as you can. It's like drinking water through a fire hose some days, and then try and get that information out to our public, to our citizens, and to our businesses. We're fortunate that we have a lot of industry in Casa Grande, so a lot of our people continued to work. It was the small businesses, the restaurants, and the barbershops, and those smaller businesses, that nail salons, that basically were hurt the most. And so that's where we're trying to help that side of our community, those groups. And then of course, a few of the people involved in those businesses and their employees obviously were hurt as well. So it's really just been an attempt to try and make sure we communicate as much as possible and give the community as much data as we can and be as transparent as possible.
Yeah, I think in any crisis, at the top of the list of things that you want to see go well is that communication in both directions. So how about we go over to Anna? What has this been like for you and your community?
Thank you, Mark, for having us all come together and just share in regards to what cities are doing at the forefront of COVID-19. We have our issues here in Tullison just in regards to being a small community. We're only 6 square miles. We have about 7,500 residents, but we have a workforce of about 28,000 within our city limits. The vast majority of them We're very similar with Casa Grande, is that, you know, there are essential workers. There's a lot of corporations, about 20 Fortune 400 and 500 that call Tolleson home. And so they have essential workers that are coming into our city every day. I would say the hardest hit are our families. We have families that are multi-generational, that live together in a single household. And to top it off as well too, I mean, we're a city with 88% Latino community. And we all know the different statistics in regards to COVID-19 and in affecting minority communities. And I would say also our small business owners, the vast majority of our small business owners are minority owned, and they just have difficulties in regards to receiving the federal funding that was allotted. And so working with them hand in hand, that's something that we can do when we're small, is that we can go to these individual businesses and really guide them through the process of how to navigate to get that funding as well too. But, you know, we're taking it day by day. As Mayor McFarland said, it's about educating, empowering, and presenting the facts and trying to slow the spread of the coronavirus in our community. And at the same time, stopping the social stigmatization of essential workers and stopping that discrimination that can run rapid in one's community.
Yeah, I've heard similar stories across the state as I've spoken to small business owners, that minority small business owners seem to have a harder time accessing the federal funds that were intended to help them. So let's go over to Mark. So Mark Mitchell, the mayor of Tempe, where my daughter Claire used to live, by the way. She graduated from ASU, so she's no longer there, no longer one of your constituents, but she enjoyed being there for 4.5 years.
Good.
So how are things in Tempe?
It's going well. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. It's going well. I mean, it's been challenging. We have a very good emergency response center with our fire and the Tempe PD. You know, we've taken a big hit, obviously, with the tourism industry, the restaurant industry, and small businesses, so much so that we had a unique partnership with the Tempe Chamber of Commerce, Local First, the Downtown Tempe Authority, and Tempe Tourism to create a Buy Local Save Now campaign for our local businesses. So we could buy gift cards, help our businesses out, tell stories. We shared on social media. It was pretty successful. We also had an opportunity to work with Desert Financial Credit Union. We did a loan program, one of the first in the state, with a credit union for small businesses in the city. Obviously, they were trying to get the loans from the federal government that came out, and we're trying to access the CARES Act money, as is everyone else on this call. The governor had a press conference yesterday. We're receiving some, but there's a lot of money that really needs to get into the hands of local government, because we really are at the front lines of this pandemic, from our first responders to the healthcare workers to the essential businesses that we have in our community. We're seeing a little bit of a slowdown in the construction, even though it was deemed essential by the governor. We have very fortunate to have ongoing projects, so that does help us out at the moment. But this is something we would need your help in the future, if it's possible when you're elected, Senator, regarding making sure that funds get into the right hands of local governments first. That is so essential, not just during this pandemic, but in general. Serving in the U.S. Conference of Mayors on the board of directors, as well as National League of Cities and a past president of the league, it's so important how cities are so crucial to the state's success. 91 cities and towns and in the state of Arizona, and we all work together in concert with some of my colleagues that are on this call for the betterment of the state of Arizona. And you'll be representing us in the future. It's important to know where the support comes from. It's important to know how important cities are to the overall state success. Because I look at us as a branch of the state, but more, we're on the front lines. And I always try to tell the governor and our state legislators how important it is to have a relationship with the cities and towns, because most of the population in Arizona lives in the city of town in the state of Arizona.
Yeah, I think that's true for any kind of organization, whether it's in the, a relationship between a state and a city, or, I spent 25 years in the military. And it's always best to have the folks on the front line, like in this case, being a city or town, have some say into how the funding is going to be used and let them make those decisions. I think that makes any organization more effective. So let's go over to Coral. I'm very jealous of the 80-degree weather up there in Flagstaff. It's going to be over, I think, over 100 here in Tucson today. So how, Coral, over the last several months, what has Flagstaff experienced?
Well, definitely, like the other mayors have said, this has been an extremely challenging time for our city. We were hard hit. One of our #1 industries here is tourism. And our small businesses, the majority of people in Northern Arizona work for a small business of less than 50 individuals. Most of the small businesses are close to 20, sometimes less than 10 individuals. Those businesses had great difficulty trying to access the monies that were available from the federal government. We are also close to the Navajo Reservation. And definitely they have been on the front page of newspapers with regarding the spread of COVID on the nation. And here in the city of Flagstaff, the COVID numbers are going up. They're not going down. You can definitely see that. One of the things that I'm really concerned about is our workforce. When you look at the numbers, and this holds true clear across Arizona, not just Coconino County, but the age group that is 20 to 44 years of age. And it's a very big group, and we asked as mayors for that to be broken down, but the numbers reported in that age group. Here in Coconino County, 42% of the individuals that have COVID are in that age group. And then when you look at the fact that individuals under the age of 20 is at 8%. So in Coconino County, we have 50% of the individuals that are experiencing COVID are under the age, or 44 years of age are under. That's our workforce. That's our current workforce. That's our future workforce. And that is their kiddos. So that's something that's very alarming, very concerning. And then also, if you look moving forward, right, individuals that had the opportunity to get the eviction preventions that were afforded to them, that is getting ready to be changed. Mortgage payments that were postponed are now getting ready to come due. There is still major issues with unemployment and getting access to the unemployment system, and also qualifying that residents are experiencing. And so, Mayor Mitchell talked about the CARES Act funding. Mm-hmm. And, the access that we as cities and towns have to that money. I will tell you, our airport got an incredible grant because we have commercial airlines that fly into our airport. But even trying to get direction as to how we could use that money and what we could use that money on has proven a timely exercise. Mm-hmm. And the fact of the matter is that we are, as mayors, closest to the ground. We are the ones that are out there packing the food boxes. We are the ones that are out there trying to help people access the assistance that they need. And we need more money in order to replace the revenue that we have lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is obviously significant. Mm-hmm. So let's go over to Gerardo. So Gerardo, how are things been in Somerton?
Well, it's been uncertain. It's just initially when we started seeing COVID, we were lagging. We didn't see a lot of cases here in Yuma, so we were trying to figure it out. Although the 4 mayors in Yuma County, we got together and we've been in communication. Good thing Mayor Sanchez of San Luis, he's a physician assistant, so he kind of was the one that educated us and what we were supposed to expect. It's been tough because the Sonora side, they started real late, and as far as taking measures, and so here in the U.S. side, we were starting to take precautions, but San Luis was waiting. It took him about a month. Also Mexicali. So now we're seeing the effects of that situation, that we're seeing a surge in Yuma County is top in the nation, or the top 3 at least. And so right now we're in the middle of the surge, and now with the state opening, now we are behind. So we're trying to work through that, and most of our businesses are essential, but most of our mom and pop businesses are owned by only Spanish speaking families. So as a city, what we've tried is to educate them and try to meet with them and educate them as much as possible to the CARES Act or any other resources that are available.
And is there a branch of Local First in the Yuma area?
Local First, I'm not sure about that.
So they can help. We'll make that connection, because they're an organization that can help businesses access some of the government programs and work through some of the challenges. So I want to get to some specific questions next. I want to start with Craig. So Craig, so many towns and cities have to face some really tough decisions right now when it comes to what their budget's going to look like and how they're going to appropriate spending. So what are you seeing in Casa Grande looking forward to your next budget?
Well, again, as I mentioned earlier, we're pretty fortunate. We have a lot of essential industry that's located here, and we were on a roll at the 1st of March. We were way ahead of the game in terms of our tax collections. They were up. Our construction sales tax was going through the roof. So we actually came into COVID with really a cushion. And so we feel that we'll be able to make it through this year, actually probably flat to last year. Where we're going to get hurt is next year. So in our 21 budget, we're anticipating. That's what I get for talking with my hands. We expect we'll be down probably about 15% next year, and we're probably the lucky ones. And that's just going to come from the lack of shared revenue that we believe we'll get from the state. Mm-hmm. We're not tourism based, so we weren't impacted by the lack of tourism. We are winter visitor based. We have about 25% or 35% of our residents actually are winter residents. So that was impacted slightly. The U.S. citizens stayed longer. The Canadians went home early. So we kind of had a little bit of a wash in terms of how many people stayed a little bit later than they normally do. Because normally they all leave about April 1st. And we have, like I said, probably about 25,000 winter residents that leave about April 1st. So that does impact us a lot of times. But again, next year, I think we'll be down about 15%, and that's where we're going to feel the impact. We're working on our budget right now. Our fiscal year ends in June, at the end of June. And we've asked all the departments to take cuts and cut back on any raises, on any, we furloughed all of our part-time help, which has affected our parks and recreation departments. So looking at trying to open some of those back up, we're in that process now, as I'm sure all the rest of the mayors are looking at. So again, like I said, it'll probably be next year that we're going to feel it. We're going to reevaluate in October. So we've established that we're going to take a look at our budget again in October and see how that impacts. Because right now we're just barely finding out what March sales tax dollars are. We have no idea yet what April is. So all that's delayed by a couple of months. So we're still trying to look at it and understand what the end impact on us will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard similar stories from businesses as well, that like this year they might be okay, and some of them, this is for like medium-sized businesses, starting to run into trouble if their revenue is down next year. It's almost like a similar, in a way, a similar issue that they're dealing with. So Anna, so access to testing has been an issue for folks. What have you and the city done to bring that testing and to bring more testing to your community so it's more available to folks?
Thank you. That's a great question, Mark. As we know, during COVID-19 times, the disparities and inequities within our communities are just highlighted even more so in regards to the needs of convenient testing, having that availability to Wi-Fi. So the issue of testing for the city of Tolleson was something that I started on immediately, because I know that there was many barriers in our community from preventing our essential workers and our residents from going to, let's say the testing blitz that were happening across the valley. And for me, it's transportation is probably one of those biggest issues that prohibit a lot of our residents from going to get testing, whether they're taking public transportation. A lot of them walk to work or ride their bike, and I would say the vast majority of our essential workers carpool to work as well too. So the issue for me hit near and dear to my heart, and I made my ask of testing to have availability in my community. I first approached the governor and the governor's staff and requested a special accommodation for testing to be located in our city. As many of you know, in our city, we are home to the only meatpacking plant in the entire state of Arizona. So testing is crucial. I saw the narrative of what was transpiring across the nation in regards to meatpacking plants, and I was determined to make sure that that didn't happen in our city and affect our West Valley. Sadly, the calls for that specialized testing were denied by the governor's staff, but I was just even more adamant in making sure that we successfully could be able to provide testing in a safe and convenient location for our essential workers and for our residents. So I called a lot of people and asked in regards to different nonprofits, and we matched up with Valle del Sol. And so we just had 2 successful testing sites and locations at our fire department last week for our essential employees and our Tolleson employees. And starting next week, we'll have 3 testing days for our Tolleson residents and also for the meatpacking plant JBS employees as well too. But continue to working in collaboration with nonprofit organizations and with the companies and entities that are here in the city of Tolleson. Numerous phone calls, and I'm thankful for the phone call that I received from you as well too, very early on, and just your advice of trying to connect with the right people to provide testing. But I think that has been an issue not only in my city, but I would say with everyone that is on this call and for all the 91 cities across Arizona. Is testing is a very important aspect of trying to slow the spread of the coronavirus. And the more that we know, the better off that we can make those decisions in our communities to keep our residents safe.
Hey, I've got a quick question for you, Anna. So do you get data on how many tests are performed each week?
Yes. So we work with, in collaboration with Valle del Sol. So they'll give us an update in regards to how many tests were performed daily. And then their lab reports directly to the department, the Arizona Department of Health, for the update in regards to testing. And then if anyone, the status of that test, the results are only shared with the person that took the test themselves.
So then if somebody's positive, there's no process in place right now to trace their contacts?
So right now, Valle del Sol does offer professional medical advice to those who they are calling that tested positive, and giving them resources, medical suggestions of what to do, how to shelter in place at home, and, going to get tested again, and just giving them those resources that are locally available for them, so that they're educated in regards to how to go and navigate through the process if they are testing positive. But I would say you hit on a very important issue in regards to contact tracers. And I know this is something that we've all advocated for at the state level, and county-wise as well too. We're seeing across the nation that having contact tracers is the key in slowing the spread of coronavirus, and especially in our small rural communities, as well in our minority communities. So we'll continue to advocate for more contact tracers throughout Arizona.
Well, so Mayor Mitchell had to jump off the call. He had some business to attend to. So I want to go over to Mayor Evans. Coral, so Flagstaff was one of the first cities to release guidelines early on to stop the spread of the virus. So what are some steps your city has taken to protect residents from COVID-19? Like, what are the things that you put in place, and put in place, by the way, early, and thank you for doing that, to protect your residents?
So early on, before the rest of the state moved forward, we went ahead and implemented a closure of our bars. Our restaurants went to either pickup or delivery service, and we also closed our hair salons. I can tell you since then, given the different executive orders that we have seen, there's very little, if anything, that mayors can do outside of what has been ordered for a statewide closures, openings, and whatnot. However, here in Flagstaff, the council has been very clear that we are opening at least city facilities based on science and the information that we're getting. And so when it comes to things such as our ball fields, our parking lots that we sometimes host large events in, permits for large events, for example, our 4th of July parade that normally brings 10,000 to 15,000 people. We decided on Tuesday that we are not going to be issuing permits for those things. We are going to wait until we actually see a decrease in our community. As I stated before, we see numbers currently going up. And so we wanted to make sure that we were being mindful of that. City employees are wearing masks. Council is wearing masks. We understand that masks do not necessarily protect us, but they're protecting others in the community. And we feel that this is something that the community is going to have to do. We've also been very clear. We've issued videos where all council members have been a part of, talking about our personal responsibility, right? Sometimes we look to government to be the end all be all, and that is not necessarily the case. And so we are making sure that our citizens are mindful that, it really is up to us as individuals to help slow the spread of COVID and to help minimize our exposure to COVID. So just a reminder to wear a mask, to wash your hands, to stay in small groups. What we can do as individuals, rather than counting on government to actually do it for us.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the numbers there in Flagstaff. There's an article in this morning's paper. I don't know if it was the Arizona Republic or the Daily Star here in Tucson, but talked about how over the last few days, I think we currently in the state have the highest number of hospitalizations, and maybe also highest number of folks on ventilators as well. And hopefully it'll flatten and then turn in the other direction here. If we do take some of those steps and we can do it consistently, and individuals can take that personal responsibility of social distancing, washing their hands, wearing masks, those are all appropriate measures that can really help and stop the spread of a very contagious virus. So let me switch over to Gerardo, and I want to talk a little bit about Yuma, because Yuma has some very specific issues that are often dealt with that sometimes are different than other parts of the state. It depends, as we all know, heavily depends on agriculture. So how have you seen that industry impacted? So like the workers and the farmers, supply chain, how has that been impacted by COVID-19?
Oh, our main season where we require more workers ended before we started seeing that surge, so it wasn't affected that much. Plus, ag workers are essential, so the executive order didn't affect that industry. Right now, what we're hearing is that Congressman Gosar is pushing for the guest program to be suspended, and that's something that all the mayors were going to get together and oppose that, because that's it's going to affect our economy. Our economy is based on agriculture, so that will affect. But as far as this season's produce season, we didn't see an effect, especially because the farm workers were essential.
Mm-hmm. So if that changes for next growing season, is there a plan being worked on how that would be addressed? Because without that workforce, the community is going to face some really serious challenges in getting those products into the supply chain.
Yeah, with that work, but we need that workforce. So with that work, without those essential workers, the ag community here would be failing. We would have a lot of issues.
Well, I'm hopeful that we're going to work through that issue as well as all these others. So let's go quickly through. I want to just get everybody's opinion on one more thing here, and that is I want to hear a little bit about the hurdles that you're experiencing in accessing this federal relief, and if there is some change that you would like to see. What are those changes to get your communities the support they need from the federal government? So specifically, what are those hurdles, and how would you, if you could fix it, what would you do? Why don't we start with Craig?
Sure, Mark. Yes, we've had trouble getting access to the federal funds. Just yesterday, the governor, as was mentioned earlier, did loosen up with some of the money the state had received. All of us on this call are under 500,000 in population, and thus we did not receive any direct federal money because of our size. And so if you calculate what the bigger cities got, it's about $174 a person per population. The governor gave us yesterday about $115 per person. So that just means that our people aren't worth as much as the people who live in Phoenix and Tucson. So anyway, I say that jokingly. It's been difficult. Hopefully he's laid it out so that we can actually be pretty flexible with the money he's going to give us. So I'm not bashing the fact that we got money. I appreciate that very much so, and it will help. But it would have been nice had the federal, when they gave the money, they gave some guidelines on how it should be spread out amongst all the counties and cities and towns. And that wasn't given. It was just, unless you're 500,000, then you got it direct from the federal government, and you didn't have to go through the state. And when you add that one layer in there, which is the state, they seem to know what's best for the rest of us. And that's not true. As it was said earlier, local government is where the rubber meets the road. Mm-hmm. And that's where we touch our constituents. We touch probably 90% of all the people in Arizona live in a city or town. So it's imperative that money get directly to the area and to the governments that actually touch the people. And that's not the state. Sorry.
So Anna, is that similar there in Tucson? Similar experience? Is there any other, because your community is the smallest of the group here today. Is there anything particular to your experience with these hurdles and getting the funding?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the disparities just in regards to the funding that we'll be receiving, you know, time is of the essence in regards to bringing forward financial assistance to our cities, and knowing that it's not a handout. It is definitely something that cities need to operate and function and provide these essential services to our community members. And so having that direct allocation to cities, regardless of the size, especially with the SMART Act that is coming up, would definitely neutralize those disparities that we're seeing now. Although this disparity brings, you know, our cities of 67 cents on the dollar in comparison to the 3 large cities and the 2 large counties, you know, having that direct allocation come from the federal government would definitely bring help, much needed help immediately, number one. And number two is that we don't have to be dealing with disparities in a time where the coronavirus doesn't discriminate where you live or the color that you are. So I think to be on even playing fields is something that we need to be advocating for, and having that access immediately is very important.
Mm-hmm. And Coral, has that been a similar experience there in Flagstaff?
Oh, without a doubt. You know, COVID-19 didn't stop at the city limits of the smaller cities and towns, right? If anything, the smaller cities and towns were impacted more so with regards to this global pandemic, especially their smaller businesses and the individuals that live there. I can tell you that that 33 cents on the dollar, or that $20 plus, is going to make a huge difference in the lives of the citizens that live in our cities and towns. And we pay taxes too, just like everyone else. And this is revenue replacement. We don't pay less taxes because we live in smaller cities and towns by any means whatsoever. I think the fact that it's taken this long for us to get some type of relief, you know, I think that's sad. You know, our cities and towns have been experiencing this in really a negative way since the middle of March. And so anything moving forward, it needs to come directly. It needs to be allocated directly to the cities and towns. We, as mayors, we are on the front line. As mayors and city councils, we are able to best determine where that money needs to be spent. We're also able to spend it a lot quicker to provide the relief that we need to provide. We don't need for the money to go to the state and to sit there and then be told what it is that we can spend our money on. You know, again, we pay taxes just like anybody else in rural Arizona, and we need to have assistance at an appropriate time when we need it.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Coral. And thank you, Anna and Craig and Gerardo, who had to jump off the call too. And Mayor Mark Mitchell as well. I really appreciate all of you joining today. Let me just end here by saying, you know, that the work that you've done for your communities is so critical to the success of our state. And these are challenges that we're facing together, and we're only going to get through this working together. I mean, that's been clear from very early on. Not only local towns and communities, but also working with the state and the federal government. You know, there's been important relief that's finally been released. We spoke a little bit about that from the governor's office yesterday. And that's an important step forward. But we still need the direct relief for Arizona's cities and towns going through them, like all of you agree upon. I remain really concerned about the budget shortfalls that we're going to face here, as Mayor McFarland mentioned, particularly next year. But that's true for, I imagine, every community across the state. So we haven't really addressed those yet. We also need to make sure that communities have the resources that they need to ensure that essential services, not just this year, but next year, like law enforcement and fire and ambulances, are maintained. We cannot, it is not a good decision. And it's a very difficult thing to do, but we've got to maintain these essential services. And we clearly cannot allow Arizona cities and towns to go bankrupt. That would be a colossal mistake. One thing I've really noticed in meeting mayors and speaking to mayors across the state is that in your job, you guys got to be problem solvers and you got to be very pragmatic and not political about this stuff. That's good to see. And you got to make decisions that have direct impacts on your communities, particularly during a crisis like this. And you often don't care who gets the credit, and that's great. And you're just there to get the job done. I'm really impressed by that. And I know citizens across the state, especially in your communities, really appreciate it. So we all collectively can learn something as we continue to work together to slow the spread of this virus and support those who this is impacting the most. So thank you again for joining. I look forward to working with you in the future, and all the best for the rest of the week. And we can get through this as a team. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
You guys.